The day had started like any other in the billionaire's large estate. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, touching the polished floors and the carefully arranged furniture. Outside, the gardens were alive with colors, birds chirping softly and the scent of flowers carried on the breeze. Everything looked peaceful, perfect even. But inside the house, the air was about to be pierced with shocking news. The billionaire had always been a busy man. His mornings were usually filled with meetings, calls, and decisions that affected thousands of lives. Yet despite his hectic schedule, there was always one constant that grounded him: the presence of the maid. She was more than an employee. She was a part of the household's rhythm. She had worked there for over a decade, quietly managing the house, caring for the children, and often going beyond what anyone could expect. He had always admired her dedication, even if he rarely expressed it. On that particular morning, a young staff member arrived at the office with a phone trembling in her hand. She had the kind of face that tried to mask fear and worry but failed. The billionaire noticed immediately that something was wrong. "Sir, it's about her," the staff member said, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's been an accident," they said. "She didn't survive." The words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. The billionaire froze, the pen in his hand dropping onto the desk. The room suddenly felt colder, the sunlight less bright. He tried to understand, but his mind refused to process it. She couldn't be gone. She couldn't just vanish like that. She had always been there, her presence so constant that the house felt empty without her. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice shaking despite his usual calm demeanor. I don't know all the details, sir. The police said she passed away." "They are on their way with a report," she replied, biting her lip nervously. The billionaire got up abruptly, pacing the room. He remembered the times she had stayed late to finish laundry, the nights she had comforted his children when they were sick, the way she had quietly repaired little things around the house without being asked. How could she be gone? It felt impossible. Minutes later, the official report arrived. The words were clear, and the date and time of the accident were precise. A terrible accident had occurred, and according to the authorities, she had not survived. Every page, every sentence hammered the truth deeper into his heart. The billionaire sat down, his head in his hands, unable to move or speak. The world seemed to stop, leaving only the unbearable weight of loss. News traveled fast in the house. The children, who were still in their pajamas, were called to the study. Their faces turned pale when they heard the news. The maid had been like a second mother to them. She had taught them manners, helped with their homework, and was always there to listen when they needed someone. The idea of her gone was more than they could bear. Tears flowed freely, and the billionaire had to steady them both as they cried. It was a moment of pure, raw grief. Preparations for the funeral started almost immediately. The household staff moved quickly, arranging flowers, contacting a local funeral home, and preparing invitations for those who knew her. Despite the billionaire's immense wealth, this was a moment of profound sadness, one that no amount of money could fix. He insisted on being involved in every detail, wanting to honor her properly. He wanted her memory to be preserved, not just as a servant, but as someone who had touched all their lives. As arrangements were underway, memories of her flooded the house. He remembered her laughing quietly in the kitchen, humming as she worked. He remembered the way she had noticed when someone was sad and found a way to comfort them without making a fuss. She had a way of making everyone feel valued and cared for. The house felt emptier than ever, the silence a painful reminder of what they had lost. Outside the house, neighbors and friends began to hear the news. Many of them had known her personally, respected her work, and admired her character. Messages of condolence poured in, and soon journalists caught wind of the story. The thought that someone so humble could be connected to a billionaire captured attention. Headlines would later describe her as the loyal maid who served the rich but had touched many hearts along the way. Yet for the billionaire, the story wasn't about headlines. It was about the person who had been a part of his life for more than 10 years, someone irreplaceable. Amid the grief, he couldn't help but feel a gnawing sense of guilt. Had he taken her presence for granted? Had he been too busy to truly show appreciation? The questions haunted him. Every corner of the mansion reminded him of her. The kitchen where she worked so tirelessly, the bedrooms she had kept immaculate, the little notes she sometimes left for the children. Her absence was felt everywhere. Even as the household continued to move forward with funeral plans, the billionaire struggled with disbelief. Part of him refused to accept the news. How could someone so alive, so vibrant, simply be gone? Memories of her kindness, her strength, and her unwavering dedication played over and over in his mind. He wondered if somehow, by some miracle, the news could be wrong. But the reports were official, the paperwork confirmed it, and every indication pointed to the same heartbreaking truth. Despite the sorrow, the billionaire knew he had to lead the household through the next steps. He had to prepare the children, staff, and family for the funeral. He had to be strong, even when every fiber of his being wanted to collapse under the weight of grief. He gave instructions calmly, though inside he was breaking. He spoke with funeral planners, arranged flowers, and ensured that her favorite songs and traditions would be included. He wanted everything to be perfect, a fitting tribute to a life that had meant so much. Late into the night, he sat alone in his office, thinking about the life that had just ended. He recalled small moments, like the way she had comforted his daughter after a fall, the quiet way she had reminded him of birthdays or anniversaries, the meals she had cooked with love and care. Each memory felt sharper now, more precious and painful. He whispered her name softly, hoping somehow she could hear him. Outside, the world went on. Cars passed by. Neighbors chatted. Birds still sang in the gardens, but inside the mansion, time seemed to have stopped. The billionaire couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. It wasn't just a loss of an employee. It was the absence of a presence that had shaped the household in countless ways. He had lost a guardian, a confidant, and a friend. The staff stayed close, offering support, but their own grief mirrored his. Everyone in the house had been touched by her kindness. They remembered her patience, her gentle smile, and her way of making the house feel like a home. Without her, the rooms felt hollow. The walls seemed colder, and even the sunlight couldn't brighten the spaces she had cared for so diligently. As the night grew darker, the billionaire finally allowed himself to rest, though sleep came in short, uneasy bursts. His mind replayed the day over and over, the words of the staff member, the official report, and the image of the empty hallway where she used to walk. He thought of her family, wondering how they would cope with the loss, and felt a deep pang of sorrow for them as well. Yet, even in the midst of grief, a small part of him held on to hope, a tiny spark that refused to be extinguished. He didn't know why, but something in his heart told him to wait, to watch and to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was more to the story than what the reports had said. And so, the house settled into a quiet morning, the billionaire sitting in his office, staring out at the gardens, lost in memories, and holding on to the faintest thread of hope that the life he thought was gone might not be over just yet. The morning after the news broke, the mansion felt emptier than ever. Every room seemed to echo with her absence. The billionaire walked through the hallways, touching the furniture she had polished, noticing the small details that only she had cared for. He could almost hear her humming in the kitchen, the soft rhythm of her footsteps, the gentle way she moved around the house, always alert, always caring. But all he felt now was silence. The children were quiet, sitting together in the lounge, holding on to each other and occasionally glancing at their father. He wanted to comfort them, but he struggled to find the words. He was just as shocked as they were. She had been a part of their lives since they were born, teaching them, protecting them, and making the house feel alive. Without her, it felt like a part of the family had disappeared. The household staff moved carefully around the house. There was a mixture of sorrow and urgency in their movements. Tasks were completed mechanically, but the smiles that usually accompanied their work were gone. Even the cook, who had worked alongside her for years, couldn't bring herself to prepare meals without the familiar chatter and laughter of her friend nearby. It was as if the house itself mourned her absence. Meanwhile, arrangements for the funeral progressed quickly. Florists were contacted, the casket was selected, and invitations were sent to everyone who had known her. The billionaire insisted on being personally involved in every detail. He wanted to honor her, to make sure that the world recognized her loyalty, her hard work, and her unshakable kindness. Yet underneath all his planning, a part of him refused to accept the reality. How could someone so alive, so present, suddenly be gone? Outside the mansion, the neighbors had started gathering quietly. Many of them had known her for years, respected her, and admired her strength. They remembered her generosity, How she often helped people in need, sometimes without anyone noticing. News of her death spread quickly, and soon messages of sympathy began to arrive from friends, colleagues, and even strangers who had heard about her work. The billionaire read them all, feeling both comforted and devastated at the same time. The world mourned her, and yet he could barely believe it. In the midst of all this, he remembered the last time he had spoken to her. She had been cheerful, joking about a small mistake one of the children had made while painting. He remembered her laughter, the way she had wiped her hands on a towel, and the patience in her eyes as she guided the children. It seemed impossible that the same person who had been so full of life just hours ago could now be gone. He began to question everything. Had there been a mistake? Was it really her? He asked the staff to check the details again, to confirm the report. But all the official paperwork said the same thing. It was a horrible accident, and according to the authorities, she had not survived. Still, he couldn't stop thinking that maybe something had gone wrong. A small voice in his heart refused to give up hope. He remembered her resilience, how she had faced difficulties in the past without complaint, always finding a way to keep going. Could it be possible that even now somehow she had survived? That afternoon, he decided to visit the place where the accident had reportedly happened. He wanted to see it for himself, to understand what had gone wrong. The staff accompanied him, but all they found was a quiet street, the scene cleared, and the remnants of an accident that seemed too ordinary to have taken such an extraordinary life. Still, there was no sign of her. It was hard to reconcile what he felt in his heart with the reality before his eyes. Back at the mansion, the children asked questions, their small voices filled with worry. "Daddy, will she be at the funeral?" one of them asked, tears in their eyes. The billionaire knelt beside them, holding their hands. "We will honor her just like she deserves," he said, trying to sound certain even when he wasn't. He wanted to protect them from the truth, from the depth of grief he felt, but he knew it was impossible to shield them completely. As the day went on, the mansion became a hive of activity. Staff prepared the rooms for visitors who would come to pay their respects. Flowers were arranged carefully, notes of remembrance were written, and photographs were gathered to create a small display celebrating her life. Each task reminded everyone of her presence, even in her absence. Every small detail she had managed now had to be recreated or remembered, and it made the emptiness even more tangible. The billionaire, despite his grief, found himself drawn to memories. He remembered how she had organized the children's birthdays, always making sure every detail was perfect. He recalled the small gifts she had given the staff for no reason at all, the little acts of kindness that had gone unnoticed, but had made life better for everyone around her. Her life had been quiet, humble, but profoundly impactful. As evening approached, he sat in his office thinking about her. The sun set slowly, casting long shadows across the polished floors. He remembered how she had always encouraged him to slow down, to appreciate the small things, the little moments of life that so often went unnoticed. And now, in the stillness, he realized how much he had taken her for granted. He wished he had told her more often how much she meant, how much she was appreciated. He asked the staff to prepare a special tribute for her, a way to honor her not just as a worker, but as a person who had touched their lives deeply. They worked quietly, gathering photos, arranging flowers, and writing heartfelt notes. Every member of the household contributed, sharing stories of her generosity, patience, and unwavering dedication. It became clear that her influence had reached far beyond what anyone had realized. That night, the billionaire couldn't sleep. He walked through the house again, checking the rooms she had kept so meticulously. Everything was in order, but the house felt hollow without her. He could still picture her moving from room to room, smiling softly, humming quietly as she worked. The memory was vivid, almost as if she were still there, watching over the house, keeping it alive. He wondered about her final moments, how she must have felt, and the thought filled him with both sorrow and anger, sorrow for the life cut short, and anger that such a misunderstanding could happen. Yet he held on to a small, stubborn hope. He remembered the way she had overcome obstacles in the past, how she had persisted when things seemed impossible. Could it be that somehow she was still alive somewhere, struggling but determined to survive? The children, exhausted from the day's emotions, finally fell asleep. The staff gathered in the kitchen, sharing memories of her, laughing softly through their tears. They remembered the little things she had done, the small acts of kindness that had made their days brighter. And in those shared stories, they found comfort, a reminder that her life, though seemingly ended, had left a lasting imprint on all of them. Outside, the night was calm, the gardens quiet under the moonlight. The billionaire stood by the window staring into the darkness, thinking about her. He promised himself that if there was even the slightest chance that she was still alive, he would find her. He wouldn't rest until he knew the truth. There was a part of him, deep and insistent, that refused to accept the finality of the accident. He believed somehow that the story was not yet over, that the woman who had cared so much for his family might yet return. And so, the house slept, heavy with grief but tinged with a fragile hope. Everyone waited unknowingly on the edge of an extraordinary turn of events that would soon change everything. The morning of the funeral arrived with a quiet tension hanging over the mansion. The air felt heavier than usual, thick with sorrow and anticipation. Staff moved quickly and silently, arranging flowers and checking every detail of the house one last time. Outside, vehicles arrived carrying close friends, neighbors, and distant relatives who had come to pay their respects. Everyone was subdued, speaking in hushed tones, their eyes reflecting the same grief that filled the house. The billionaire walked through the rooms, straightening small details, making sure everything was perfect. The casket had been brought in and placed in the grand hall, surrounded by a sea of flowers. He stared at it for a long time, the weight of the moment pressing on him. He thought about her laughter, her gentle presence, and the countless ways she had touched their lives. Each memory made his heart ache more. The children were gathered nearby, dressed in somber clothes, holding on to each other. They had tried to be strong, but the thought of losing someone who had been like a second parent to them was unbearable. Their small hands trembled as they gripped one another, and their eyes filled with tears. The billionaire knelt beside them, whispering words of comfort, though he could feel the cracks in his own voice. He tried to be strong for them, even as grief threatened to overwhelm him. Guests began to arrive in the hall, softly exchanging condolences and offering gentle hugs. Everyone spoke of her loyalty, her kindness, and the quiet ways she had made their lives better. Stories were shared about her small acts of generosity, her patience, and her unshakable commitment to helping others. The atmosphere was heavy with mourning, yet threaded with admiration for the life she had lived. As the ceremony began, the priest stepped forward, offering a few words about life, death, and the importance of remembering those who had passed. The billionaire sat beside his children, his hands resting on their small shoulders. He listened, nodding politely, but his mind wandered to memories of her. He thought about the mornings she had made breakfast for the children, the nights she had stayed up to care for them when they were sick, and the quiet ways she had kept the house running smoothly. Every memory made the present feel even more unbearable. The soft notes of music began to play, a tune she had loved, and a few guests closed their eyes in reverence. The casket sat at the center, surrounded by flowers and photographs, but despite the beauty of the arrangements, a sense of emptiness lingered. Everyone seemed to feel it, the absence of someone who had quietly shaped the lives around her. Suddenly, a faint noise echoed from the entrance of the hall. At first, it was barely noticeable, almost like a whisper carried by the wind. People looked around, unsure if they had heard it. The billionaire's heart skipped a beat, a strange feeling of unease washing over him. He turned toward the source, his eyes scanning the doorway. Then, to everyone's disbelief, she appeared. Weak, pale, and supported by a couple of neighbors, she stepped into the hall. Her clothes were disheveled, and her hair fell in loose strands around her face, but she was alive. The room fell into stunned silence. People froze, their expressions frozen between shock and disbelief. The music stopped abruptly, leaving only the sound of her uneven footsteps on the polished floor. The billionaire couldn't move. His eyes widened, his mouth opening and closing as if trying to speak, but no words came out. He felt as if the world had tilted on its axis. She was standing there alive in front of the casket that had been prepared for her own funeral. His heart pounded, a mixture of joy, fear, and disbelief, making it hard to breathe. The children gasped, clutching each other tightly. Their eyes were wide with wonder, tears streaming down their faces. She's alive?" one whispered. The others nodded frantically, unable to comprehend the miracle in front of them. Guests whispered to each other, some shaking their heads in confusion, others stepping back in awe. Journalists in attendance scrambled for cameras, capturing the unexpected turn of events. It was a scene unlike anything anyone had ever seen. A funeral interrupted by the sudden return of the person everyone believed was gone. The maid, weak but determined, raised a trembling hand and spoke softly. I'm here. I'm alive." Her voice was barely audible, but it carried through the hall, silencing everyone completely. She had been through so much, yet she had found the strength to make it there, to stop a ceremony that should never have taken place. The billionaire finally found his voice, rushing toward her. He knelt beside her, holding her hands, tears streaming down his face. How are you here? We thought we lost you," he said, his voice breaking. She looked at him with tired eyes, a faint smile forming on her lips. I don't know how to explain," she whispered. "It was an accident. They thought but I survived. I needed help." Her words were halting, but the meaning was clear. She had endured a struggle, fighting to reach someone who could save her, and against all odds, she had succeeded. The billionaire embraced her gently, still in shock. He could hardly believe it was real. The room around them felt surreal, the air heavy with emotion. Everyone in the hall was either crying, laughing, or holding their breath in disbelief. Staff rushed forward, helping her take a seat and offering water, blankets, and support. They too were overwhelmed, their emotions spilling over as they realized the truth. She was alive. The children ran to her, hugging her tightly, their small arms wrapping around her with a fierce intensity. "We thought we lost you," they sobbed, clinging to her as if they could never let go. She held them close, whispering reassurances, her voice soft but filled with love. The billionaire watched, his heart swelling with relief and gratitude. Neighbors who had brought her into the hall explained how she had been found after the accident, weak and unable to contact anyone. They had guided her to safety, helped her get medical attention, and ensured she could make it to the mansion. The story of her survival spread through the room, and the astonishment deepened. People could hardly believe what had happened. The funeral had been stopped in its tracks, replaced by a scene of reunion and relief. Guests, still stunned, began to approach, offering apologies, hugs, and tears. Many said prayers of gratitude, overwhelmed by the unexpected miracle they had witnessed. The casket, once a symbol of loss, now seemed unnecessary, a reminder of how fragile life and perception could be. The billionaire stayed close to her, holding her hands, asking questions, wanting to understand everything. She explained slowly and with difficulty how she had survived the accident, how she had struggled to find help, and how fear and exhaustion had almost prevented her from returning. Every word was filled with quiet bravery, and everyone listened intently, realizing how incredible her resilience had been. As the initial shock faded, laughter and tears began to mix. Stories were shared about her courage, the kindness of the neighbors who helped her, and the impact she had made on the household. The atmosphere, once heavy with grief, transformed into one of celebration, gratitude, and awe. It was a moment that no one would ever forget, a turning point that had changed the lives of everyone present. The billionaire, still holding her hand, whispered, "I thought I lost you. I don't know what I would have done without you." She smiled weakly, exhausted but happy, and said, "I'm here now. That's all that matters." He nodded, tears still running down his cheeks, feeling a mix of relief, joy, and humility. The children stayed close, not wanting to let go. Staff and neighbors surrounded her, offering comfort and care. Everyone understood the gravity of what had just happened. A life that had been declared lost had returned, and with it, a renewed sense of appreciation for resilience, courage, and the unexpected twists of life. By the time evening fell, the mansion was alive again, but in a different way. There was laughter, soft but genuine. There were tears, but now they were mingled with smiles. The day that had begun in grief had turned into a story of survival and reunion, a moment that would be remembered forever. The billionaire watched her quietly as she rested, overwhelmed with gratitude. He realized how easily life could be misunderstood, how quickly assumptions could lead to despair, and how precious every moment truly was. She had returned against all odds, and it had left an indelible mark on all their hearts. And in that quiet moment, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the billionaire understood something he had never fully appreciated before. Life could surprise in the most extraordinary ways, and those we think we lose may still find a way to come back, changing everything in the process. after the initial shock of seeing her alive began to fade. The billionaire and everyone in the mansion slowly settled into a mix of relief, curiosity, and awe. The children clung to her, whispering questions and sharing tears, while staff members hovered close, ensuring she had everything she needed. The room that had been heavy with grief now pulsed with a strange energy, a mixture of joy, disbelief, and an unspoken understanding that something extraordinary had just happened. Once she had regained some strength, the billionaire gently guided her to a chair near the window, sunlight streaming in and warming the room. He sat beside her, holding her hands and looking into her tired eyes. "We need to know what happened," he said softly, his voice steady but full of emotion. "Everyone, we all need to understand. You can tell me everything." She took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling slowly, her fingers gripping his hands lightly. "It started the day before the accident," she began.
"I had been cleaning in the kitchen when I slipped near the back steps.
I didn't think it was serious at first. Just a small fall. But then I hit my head and everything went black for a while. When I woke up, I was trapped. I couldn't reach my phone. I tried calling out, but no one could hear me." Her voice trembled as she continued, but there was a quiet strength beneath the fear. "I don't know how long I was there. Hours, maybe more. I was scared. I thought no one would find me. But I couldn't give up. I remembered your children. I thought about them and I knew I had to survive no matter what." The billionaire felt a lump in his throat. The depth of her courage, the determination to survive, and the thought of her struggling alone for hours left him shaken. He squeezed her hands gently, trying to convey the relief, gratitude, and admiration he felt all at once. She continued, describing how she had finally managed to drag herself toward the main road. Her body was weak and every step was painful, but she refused to stop. "I kept thinking someone would notice me. Someone would help. And then a neighbor found me. They didn't know who I was at first, but they helped me. They gave me water, helped me stand, and finally understood who I was. They guided me here even though I could barely walk." The billionaire listened closely, his mind piecing together every moment, every struggle she had endured. He realized how fragile life could be, how quickly assumptions could lead to despair, and how the smallest acts of kindness, like those neighbors helping her, could change everything. He asked gently, "Why didn't you try to call the house again sooner?" She shook her head, a faint smile on her lips despite the pain in her voice. "I tried, but my phone was broken in the fall. I couldn't reach anyone. And every time I thought about trying to walk somewhere, I almost collapsed. I didn't know if I could make it. But I refused to give up. I kept telling myself, I have to see them again, I have to get back." The billionaire felt his eyes well up with tears. He had always admired her resilience, but now he understood it in a new way. She had faced fear, injury, and near despair, and yet she had persisted, driven by love, duty, and determination. It was a strength he had never fully appreciated until now. Staff members who had helped arrange the funeral now moved closer, offering blankets, water, and gentle support. Each one listened silently as she described her ordeal, their expressions shifting from relief to admiration. They realized that the woman they had mourned moments before had endured something incredible, and had returned not only alive but full of quiet courage. The children, still holding her hands, listened carefully as well. They asked simple questions. "Were you scared? Did it hurt? How did you keep going?" And she answered honestly, explaining her fear but also her determination. She told them that thinking about them, about the family, had given her strength when she felt like giving up. Her words filled the children with awe and gratitude, and they clung to her even more tightly. As the day progressed, the billionaire arranged for her to be examined by a doctor, ensuring she received proper medical care. Despite the ordeal, she remained remarkably composed, showing resilience even in weakness. The doctor confirmed that she had suffered minor injuries and some bruises, but would make a full recovery. It was a miracle that she had survived the accident at all, and everyone present felt it deeply. With the medical situation taken care of, the billionaire turned his attention to the neighbors who had assisted her. He wanted to personally thank them for their kindness. They had helped her when no one else could, guided her safely to the mansion, and ensured she could reunite with the family. He offered them gratitude and even rewards, insisting that their actions had saved a life and that they deserved recognition. The neighbors, humble and modest, simply shook their heads and smiled, saying that anyone would have done the same. Meanwhile, the children began to regain a sense of normalcy. Still holding her hands and laughing softly at small jokes, she whispered. They were overwhelmed with joy, unable to stop hugging her and asking questions about every detail of her survival. She answered them patiently, showing the same gentle care that had always defined her. The billionaire reflected on the lessons of the day. He had learned how fragile life could be, how easily misinformation could lead to despair, and how resilience, courage, and kindness could transform even the darkest situations. The woman they had believed dead had not only survived, but had returned to remind them all of the value of perseverance and love. As evening approached, the mansion gradually returned to a quieter rhythm. She rested in her favorite chair, the children nearby and staff members attending to her needs. The billionaire sat in the study, thinking about the extraordinary turn of events. He realized how little he had truly appreciated her before, taking for granted the constant presence of someone who had quietly shaped the household for years. Now, having seen her strength and courage firsthand, he felt a deep respect and gratitude that went beyond words. He also thought about the mistakes that had led to the false news of her death. It was a reminder of how quickly assumptions could spiral out of control and how important it was to seek the truth before accepting what seemed certain. It was a lesson he would never forget. That night, the family gathered together, sitting around her and sharing stories. Laughter mixed with tears as they recounted small, ordinary moments that had once seemed unremarkable, but now shone brightly in memory. The children listened intently, marveling at how someone so ordinary in appearance could possess such extraordinary courage and love. The billionaire quietly observed, realizing that life had given them all a second chance. The woman they thought they had lost had returned, and with her she had brought a renewed sense of connection, gratitude, and awareness. Every detail of the mansion, every small ritual of their lives seemed brighter now, imbued with the awareness of what could have been lost forever. Before the night ended, the billionaire sat beside her one more time. "I can't imagine life without you," he said softly. She smiled, weakly but warmly. "I'm here now," she replied, "and that's all that matters. Everything else can wait." He nodded, understanding that her presence was more important than anything else. The ordeal had changed them all, not just by the shock of the near loss, but by the profound reminder of the resilience of the human spirit, the power of love, and the impact one life could have on so many others. As the lights dimmed in the mansion and the household settled into a quiet night, there was a sense of peace mixed with wonder. They had faced grief, fear, and uncertainty. But through it all, the woman who had been thought lost had returned. And in her return, she had given them all a gift far greater than anything money could buy. A reminder that courage, love, and determination could triumph over even the most impossible circumstances. In the days following her miraculous return, the mansion slowly came back to life in a way it hadn't known in weeks. The air, once heavy with grief, was now filled with quiet joy and relief. Staff moved through the rooms with renewed purpose, checking on her, the children, and each other, making sure that everyone was safe and comfortable. The billionaire walked through the house, still in awe of what had happened, grateful beyond words, yet humbled by the lessons he had learned. The children were happier than they had been in days. They clung to her constantly, asking endless questions about her survival and recounting every memory they had shared with her. Their laughter, once subdued by sorrow, now filled the mansion's hallways, echoing in the rooms and reminding everyone that life had returned, stronger than before. Even in moments of rest, the children held her hand or leaned on her shoulder, as if drawing strength from her presence. The billionaire spent much of his time with her, wanting to ensure she had everything she needed for a full recovery. He arranged for medical checkups, nutritious meals, and soft clothing to make her feel comfortable. Yet more than the physical care, he wanted to express the gratitude and respect he felt deep in his heart. She had risked everything, fought through pain, and returned to them, and he felt that her courage deserved more than just words. One morning, he called a small meeting with the neighbors who had helped her. He wanted to honor them publicly, acknowledging the part they had played in saving a life. He spoke sincerely, expressing his deep gratitude and admiration for their quick thinking and kindness. The neighbors, humble and modest, smiled quietly, insisting that anyone would have done the same. But the billionaire knew the truth. Without their help, she might never have returned, and the lives of everyone in the mansion would have been forever changed. As the days passed, life gradually returned to a routine, but nothing felt ordinary anymore. The experience had left an indelible mark on everyone in the household. The billionaire often found himself pausing to appreciate small moments. The way she laughed, how the children shared stories, the quiet dedication of his staff. Every ordinary detail seemed extraordinary now because he knew how close they had come to losing someone so vital. She, meanwhile, began to slowly resume her responsibilities in the house, though with more rest and careful attention than before. Her movements were still a little slower, her energy not yet fully restored, but her spirit remained unbroken. She continued to care for the children, the staff and the household with the same quiet dedication that had always defined her. Yet there was a new confidence in her presence, a gentle authority that came from having faced a life-threatening situation and come through it. The children often asked her to tell them the story of her survival, and she did, patiently and honestly. She spoke of fear, pain, and uncertainty, but also of determination, hope, and the kindness of strangers. Every retelling left the children inspired, teaching them lessons about courage, resilience, and the importance of never giving up, even when life seems impossible. They listened wide-eyed, sometimes interrupting with questions, their admiration for her growing with each detail. The billionaire began to see her in a new light as well. He understood that her life had not just been about serving the household. It had been about teaching, protecting, and influencing those around her in ways he had only just begun to recognize. He reflected on the way he had sometimes taken her for granted, always expecting her to be there, always assuming her presence was permanent. Now he realized that he needed to value her every single day, not just when faced with the thought of loss. In the weeks that followed, he made changes in the household. He ensured that she had better support, lighter duties, and more opportunities to rest. He personally thanked her every day, expressing his gratitude not as an employer to an employee, but as a man deeply moved by someone who had risked everything for those she loved. His respect and admiration for her grew steadily, becoming a quiet but unwavering part of his character. The neighbors who had helped her remained close to the family, often visiting to share meals, stories, and laughter. Their bond, forged through a moment of crisis, became lasting. They were no longer just neighbors. They were friends, connected forever by the miraculous event that had changed their lives and the lives of the household. Even the staff who had worked alongside her for years found new inspiration. They saw firsthand what courage, determination, and resilience could achieve. They realized that their work was not just about routine tasks, but about supporting lives, protecting people, and fostering a household where care and kindness mattered above all else. Each staff member quietly vowed to honor her example in their own ways, making the mansion a place of respect, teamwork, and compassion. The billionaire also began to reflect on his own life more deeply. He realized that wealth and power could not protect him or anyone else from loss. What mattered most were the people around him, their presence, their loyalty, and the ways they made life meaningful. He began to see the importance of humility, gratitude, and recognition, understanding that every person who touched his life deserved to be valued and celebrated. One evening, as the sun set over the gardens, the billionaire and the maid walked together through the grounds. The children followed closely, laughing and playing, their earlier sadness replaced by joy. She looked around at the flowers, the pathways, and the trees, and then at the children, a soft smile on her face. "I never thought I'd be here again," she said quietly. "But I am, and I'm grateful for every moment." He nodded, understanding the depth of her words. "We're grateful too," he said softly. "You've taught us so much without ever trying. Your courage, your care, and your presence, none of it will ever be forgotten." She looked at him, eyes shining, and for the first time in days, they shared a quiet, mutual understanding of how profoundly this experience had changed them both. In the months that followed, life at the mansion took on a renewed sense of purpose. There was laughter, learning, and love in the air, a constant reminder of the fragility of life and the strength of the human spirit. The children thrived under her care, growing more compassionate and understanding with each passing day. Staff worked with renewed dedication, inspired by her resilience and the knowledge that every act of care could make a difference. The billionaire, though still busy with work and responsibilities, never forgot the lessons he had learned. He made time for the people around him, expressed gratitude openly, and ensured that the household functioned as a place of respect, kindness, and community. He understood now that wealth alone could not create happiness or fulfillment. What mattered were the bonds between people, the courage to face adversity and the willingness to care for one another deeply. She, too, found a new sense of purpose. Her survival had given her confidence and a quiet strength that touched everyone around her. She continued to care for the family, but she also took time for herself, understanding the value of her own life, her own health, and her own dreams. Her return had not just saved the household from grief, it had given her a renewed sense of her own worth and potential. Over time, the story of her survival spread quietly beyond the mansion. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers learned about the woman who had been declared dead, who had faced near-certain death and returned to inspire everyone around her. Her courage became a symbol, a reminder that hope, determination, and kindness could overcome even the most impossible odds. Yet within the mansion, the story was even more personal. It was a story of love, care, and human connection. It was a story of gratitude, respect, and the realization that even those who seem ordinary can have an extraordinary impact. The billionaire often reflected on how close he had come to losing someone irreplaceable, and how that near loss had changed the way he viewed life. In quiet moments, he would sit with her, watching the children play, feeling a profound sense of gratitude for her presence. He knew that wealth could never replace what she had brought to their lives: loyalty, courage, wisdom, and love. And every time he looked at her, he was reminded that life was fragile, precious, and filled with opportunities to show care and appreciation. The mansion, once silent with grief, now hummed with life. The gardens, the rooms, the laughter, and the conversations were all reminders of a second chance. A life that had been thought lost had returned, and with it came lessons that would shape the household forever. Everyone in the mansion understood that they had been given a rare gift: the chance to see resilience, courage, and love triumph in the most unexpected way. Years later, the children would remember this time vividly: the day they thought they had lost someone they loved, the moments of despair, and the miraculous return that changed everything. They would remember her courage, the lessons she taught without words, and the way she made them feel safe, cared for, and inspired, and they would carry those lessons with them, understanding that even in the darkest times, hope and determination could light the way. The billionaire, too, never forgot. He often reflected on the extraordinary turn of events, the lessons learned, and the importance of valuing the people who make a difference in life. Her presence had reminded him that no amount of wealth could replace love, loyalty, and courage. He had learned to cherish every moment, every person, and every simple act of kindness. And as the years went by, the mansion remained a place of warmth, care, and connection, forever shaped by the woman who had been thought lost and had returned to teach them all the meaning of courage, resilience, and love. Her life became more than just a story of survival. It became a legacy, an enduring reminder that even in the face of the impossible, hope, determination, and kindness could prevail, leaving a mark on everyone fortunate enough to be touched by it.